So if we look at the average food energy consumption rate for a healthy human, let's take 2,000 calories a day, and doing the unit conversion gives me 97 watts continuous. I told you it was 100, close enough. So in my mind, being somebody who's obviously willing to round off, in my mind, to keep you alive, we need 1/10 of a kilowatt of food energy supplied. 1/10 of a kilowatt. If you take the total U.S. energy consumption, put it into units of watts, and divide it by our population, the number that you get is 11 kilowatt per capita. 11 kilowatt per man, woman, and child in this country. Now, that number doesn't mean much, at least it doesn't to me, until I put it in the context of what it takes to keep me alive, which is 1/10 of a kilowatt. It takes 1/10 of a kilowatt to keep me alive. If you don't do that, you have starvation. But the total power consumption in the country is 11 kilowatts, which, by the way, is about a gigajoule per day per capita. That is 110 times more than what's needed to simply keep you alive. Now, that's not meant as good, bad, or otherwise. There are clearly some wonderful consequences of the high energy consumption rate in our country, including literally freedom or mobility, diversity of employment that we have, and a very, very high material standard of living, and one, quite frankly, to which most of the rest of the world aspires. There are, however, and we are increasingly aware of this, I think that 50 years ago was very arguable. There was a small group of people, generally considered nutcases, who thought that there were maybe some downsides. Go YouTube, what is it called? Destination Earth. Destination Earth is a cartoon from the 1950s. I ran into it with my kids, and it's a cartoon about Martian who lives in something that looks like the USSR superimposed in Mars. So it's this really communistic Martian who comes to Earth and sees how things are done. And it's just hilarious, 50s pro-consumption, pro-oil, anti-communist propaganda. It's very interesting to see how things have changed, because some of those things most Americans would still hold to, but a lot of them people are a lot more questioning about than they were 50 years ago. Geopolitical, environmental, social, and health, and perhaps even life expectancy consequences, or at least, and by life expectancy, there is a wonderful graph in that 1983 textbook by Smill that has life expectancy in years versus per capita, I can't spell, per capita power consumption. And he has data from different countries, and it kind of looks like this, all right? And, you know, a line like that fits through it quite nicely. And what's interesting is that when you get to about 2 kilowatt per capita, you're at the maximum life expectancy. It doesn't really drop off a lot, but it doesn't go much higher. We're out here at 11 kilowatts. Now, I'm not making an argument that we should cut right back to 2 kilowatts. There's more to life than just life expectancy, okay? But my point is that these issues that we'll be talking about all semester have a very important technological side, but they also have a policy, political, theological, philosophical side that I won't pretend to be a master of, but I'm not going to sweep them under the carpet. Okay, I'm not a believer in just simple technological solutions. It's a combination. So we'll kind of keep visiting that idea throughout the semester. In fact, well, and this is an addition to what I've been doing in previous years. Let's talk about some widely differing views of what the future holds. Now that we sort of recognize that maybe there are some downsides to the technological civilization that we have. And one view is technological optimism, which basically says necessity is the mother of invention, and as energy supplies dwindle or environmental effects get larger, somebody clever, with help from the free market, will sort it out. I saw a talk by the founder of 3Com. I don't remember what his name was. He is a, I don't know if he's a billionaire, but he's a very large multimillionaire at the very least. And he spoke to a bunch of us at a meeting for NSF grant awardees just a few months ago. And he was there, I guess, in some sense at the startup of the internet. And he said, you know, that all the brilliant minds of the internet are now turning their minds to energy, and that we should be seeing solutions from them that will use the principles of the internet in providing energy for the world. And that he foresaw that 100 years from now, the average power consumption would not be 11 kilowatt per capita. It would be 22 kilowatt per capita. He said that what happens is people, as development occurs, people use more and more energy, and this is what we're going to do. And I thought that was interesting. He didn't answer the question I asked him, I should mention, but that doesn't matter. I'm not wholly convinced by technological optimism, but that may just reflect my personality. On the other hand, you have what I'd call deep pessimism, or maybe deep ecological pessimism, which basically says, look, you've got this species on Earth, humanity, and it has some very base instincts of greed, and those were nicely held in check for the last, it depends on how you read the fossil record, but at least 100,000, if not longer, years, until about, you know, maybe somewhere around 1,000 and 1,500 AD, at which time the scientific method started enabling humans to have a competitive advantage on this planet that's just unheralded for any species. And in so doing, you've let the genie out of the box, and we're headed for a planetary environmental disaster. The 6 billion people that we have on planet Earth are basically able to be here because they're propped up by cheap energy, and when that goes, so do a lot of them, and then it's a real mess. All right? So that, to me, is deep pessimism, and that's not me either, but it doesn't matter. I mean, and you don't get graded in this class on what you believe this way. I just want to let you know, in my mind, those sort of bound the problem. Okay? The people who say, don't worry, it's going to be taken care of by the market and by clever people. And the people who say, oh, it's too late. There's nothing that anybody can do. We are just in for famine and worse that you can't even imagine. All right? And of course, everything in between. So I say my personal bias halfway down the slide. I should probably have put that at the very top. I do think that we have infinite wants as a species. I think that's a very biological quality that human beings share with everything else. If you put yeast into a container full of growth media, they'll grow until they poison the environment and kill themselves. All right? That's a pretty, I mean, and same with the hares and the wolves and whatnot. I mean, organisms have a biological imperative to grow like mad. It's how you survive, all right? Because at some point, something's going to come along and eat you or mess up your environment in one way or another so that you get to small populations. And the only things that survive getting from small populations back up to big ones grow rapidly. So there is a certain biological imperative, I think, that we have somewhat infinite wants. And we're on a planet of finite size. I mean, the yeast in my beaker run into problems quickly because it's a small beaker. The Earth is a lot bigger than that beaker, but certainly since the dawn of the space age, when astronauts looked back at this planet and kind of went, you know, when you're at the moon, the Earth doesn't look that big anymore. And certainly since that time, we've had an awareness of the finite nature of our planet. But on the positive side, with an increased global awareness of the problems and with an accelerating pace of new technology, maybe we can avoid some of the nightmare scenarios that the real pessimists think about. And to that end, I think that, and I'll say this loudly because I know that in previous classes I've had students who say, this guy's too much of an apologist for biofuels. And perhaps that's the case. I want to be clear that I don't think that biofuels are a silver bullet by any means. In fact, it worries me that there's been a lot of biofuel promotion where they show these huge SUVs powered by E85, and that to me is the wrong idea. I think conservation is going to be part of a sustainable future. I think that there are going to be a whole lot of technologies deployed simultaneously that will address our energy and resource needs. I think the idea of a single silver bullet is unlikely, although I would love to be proven wrong. If somebody came up with a really nice way of capturing a little bit of that sun's energy we talked about in a very clean way without using heavy metals or whatnot, boy, that'd be great. That would be great. I suspect it'll be a little bumpier than that, and that we'll have a mixture of different energy sources where biorenewables are an important but not necessarily dominant part of the mix. Questions or comments?